the first time I saw Julian Carver. He was a silhouette against the neon pulse of Atlanta's skyline. A rich kid with a grin that could unravel anyone. I was just Caleb, a barista scraping by, invisible in the crowd until his eyes locked on mine, daring me to play a game that would burn my world to ashes. By the end of that night, I knew I'd either lose myself to him or find something worth fighting for. It was a sticky July evening at the Loft, a rooftop bar buzzing with the city's young and reckless. I was wiping down tables, the kind of work that leaves your hands smelling like lemon cleaner and your dreams feeling smaller. Julian strode in with his crew, all tailored suits and careless laughter, like they owned the air itself. He was 25, tall, with dark hair that fell in perfect chaos and eyes that held secrets sharper than glass. I was 24, blonde, wiry from years of hustling, and used to being overlooked. But not that night. Truth or dare. His voice cut through the chatter, low and teasing, as he leaned against the bar. I froze, rag in hand, thinking he was talking to someone else. But his gaze pinned me, unwavering, like he'd seen something in me no one else ever had. Come on, barista, play with us. I laughed, nervous, glancing at my manager, who was too busy flirting with a customer to care. I'm working, man. Pick someone else. No one else, he said, his smile tilting into something dangerous. Just you, Caleb. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe it was the way he said my name, like it was worth something. Maybe I was just tired of being invisible. We ended up on the rooftop's edge, the city sprawling below like a map of possibilities. His friends, a mix of trust fund kids and aspiring influencers, formed a loose circle, their dares growing bolder with each round. But Julian kept his focus on me. Truth, I said when it was my turn, my voice steadier than I felt. He leaned closer, his breath warm against the humid air. What's the one thing you're most afraid of? I could have lied, said spiders or heights. But his eyes were too honest, too piercing. Being nothing, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Just fading away. The group went quiet. Julian didn't laugh or push for more. He just nodded, like he understood. And for the first time, I felt seen. The game stretched late into the night, truths spilling into dares, boundaries blurring. Julian dared me to dance with him, right there on the rooftop. No music, just the hum of the city. I hesitated, but his hand found mine, warm and sure, pulling me into a slow sway. His friends hooped, but it was background noise. All I could feel was his grip, steady and electric, and the way my heart hammered like it was trying to break free. You're good at this, he murmured, his lips close to my ear. Good at what? Making a fool of myself. I shot back, but I was smiling. No, he said softly, making me want to know you. I pulled back, searching his face for a joke, but there was none. Just those eyes, dark and endless, pulling me in deeper than I was ready for. I should have walked away then. I was a nobody, a kid from a small town in Georgia who'd come to the city chasing dreams that never materialized. He was Julian Carver, heir to a real estate empire, untouchable. But that night, he wasn't untouchable. He was just Julian, and I was just Caleb. And somehow, that was enough. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Julian kept showing up at the Loft, always with that same disarming grin, always finding ways to pull me into his orbit. He'd linger after closing, helping me stack chairs, asking questions that felt too big for a barista to answer. What did I want from life? What kept me up at night? I told him about my sketchbook, the one I filled with drawings of places I'd never been, dreams I'd never chased. He listened like every word mattered. One night, he showed up alone. No entourage, just him in a plain black shirt that made his eyes look like midnight. Come with me, he said, holding out his hand. Where? I asked, suspicious but already half convinced. Somewhere real. We ended up at a quiet park on the city's edge, the kind of place where the stars felt closer than the skyscrapers. He spread a blanket on the grass, and we sat, shoulders brushing, passing a thermos of coffee back and forth. He told me about his life pressure from his father to take over the family business, expectations that weighed like concrete. I told him about mine growing up in a town where being different wasn't just hard. It was dangerous. You ever feel like you're living someone else's life? He asked, staring at the sky. Every day? I said. But tonight feels like mine. He turned to me, and before I could overthink it, his lips were on mine. It was soft at first, tentative, like he was giving me a chance to pull away. But I didn't. I kissed him back, harder, hungrier, like I could pour every unspoken fear and hope into that moment. When we finally broke apart, his forehead rested against mine, and I felt like I was falling fast, reckless, and alive. But nothing that perfect lasts. The next day, I overheard his friends at the bar, their voices sharp with gossip. Julian's just playing. One said, it's a game. Man, he's bored, and the barista's an easy target. My stomach twisted. I wanted to believe it wasn't true, but doubt crept in like poison. Was I just a dare to him? A way to pass the time? I avoided his texts, dodged his visits to the loft. But Julian wasn't the type to give up. He cornered me one night in the alley behind the bar, his face a mix of frustration and something softer. Why are you shutting me out, Caleb? I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. Is this a game to you? Truth or dare? Round 2. Because I'm not playing. His jaw tightened. You think I'm messing with you? After everything. I heard your friends. I snapped. They said I'm just a distraction. He stepped closer, his voice low but fierce. They don't know me. Not the way you do. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. Caleb, I'm not perfect. I've got baggage, expectations, a life I didn't choose. But you're the first thing I've chosen for myself. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But trust is hard when you've spent your life guarding your heart. Prove it, I said, my voice shaking. Show me this is real. He nodded, like he'd been waiting for the challenge. I will. Julian didn't waste time. The next evening, he showed up at the loft with a single rose, red as a warning, and a handwritten note. Meet me at the High Museum. 8 p.m. No games. I almost didn't go. But curiosity or maybe something deeper pulled me to the art museum's glowing entrance, where Julian waited. No entourage, just him in a navy jacket that made him look unfairly good. Inside, the museum was quiet, the kind of hush that makes every step feel significant. He led me to a gallery of modern art, where a painting of fractured colors hung like a storm caught on canvas. This is you, he said, pointing to it. All these pieces, jagged and beautiful, trying to fit together. I see it every time I look at you. I swallowed hard, unsure whether to laugh or cry. You're saying I'm a mess. No, he said, turning to face me. I'm saying you're art. That night, we wandered the galleries, talking about everything and nothing, our fears, our dreams, the way the world felt too big and too small all at once. He told me about his mother, who'd left when he was a kid, and the father who saw him as a legacy, not a person. I told him about the first time I realized I was gay, the terror of it in a town where different was a dirty word. We were two broken pieces, maybe, but together, we felt whole. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. Late-night drives through Atlanta's glittering streets, coffee dates in tucked-away cafes, kisses that tasted like promises. But the weight of his world never left us. His father, Richard Carver, was a name that carried power hotels, skyscrapers, entire city blocks. And Julian was his heir, expected to step into a life that didn't have room for someone like me. It came to a head one night at a gala Julian invited me to, a glittering affair at the Fox Theater. I felt out of place in my borrowed suit, surrounded by people who spoke in investments and influence. Julian was a natural, charming the room, but his eyes kept finding mine, grounding me, until his father approached. Julian, A word, Richard said, his voice cold enough to freeze the champagne. He barely glanced at me, but I felt the dismissal like a slap. They stepped away, and I caught fragments of their conversation, words like reputation and distraction. When Julian returned, his face was tight. His usual spark dimmed. What did he say? I asked, dreading the answer. He wants me to focus, Julian said. His voice clipped. On the business. On the family name. And what about us? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Julian's eyes softened, but there was a crack in his confidence. I don't know yet, but I'm not giving you up. That night, we left the gala early, driving to a quiet overlook above the city. We sat on the hood of his car, the skyline stretching out like a challenge. I'm not good at this, he admitted, his voice raw, standing up to him. But I'm trying. Caleb. For you. I wanted to believe him, but fear gnawed at me. I'd seen what money and power could do, how they could pull people apart. What happens if he makes you choose? I asked. Julian's hand found mine, his grip tight. Then I choose you. But words are easy. The real test came a week later, when Richard Carver summoned Julian to their family estate in Buckhead. Julian asked me to come, said he needed me there. Against my better judgment, I went. The mansion was a fortress of wealth, marble floors, chandeliers that cost more than my entire life. Richard sat in a study that smelled of leather and old money, his eyes dissecting me like I was a problem to be solved. You're the barista, he said. Not a question. My son's phase. I bristled, but Julian spoke first. He's not a phase, Dad. He's real. Richard's laugh was sharp, cutting. Real. You think this, he gestured between us, fits into our world. You have responsibilities. Julian. A legacy. I don't want your legacy, Julian snapped. I want a life. The room went still. Richard's face hardened, and I saw the ultimatum forming before he spoke it. Choose. Julian. This boy. Or your future. Julian's hand tightened around mine, but I could feel the tremor in his grip. I wanted to scream, to tell him to walk away, but I knew what was at stake. His family, his future, everything he'd been raised to be. And mid just a barista with a sketchbook and a heart too full of him. Dad, Julian said, his voice breaking. I choose him. Richard's face was stone. Then you're cut off. No trust fund. No inheritance. Nothing. The words hung heavy, but Julian didn't flinch. He turned to me, his eyes fierce with something I hadn't seen before, defiance. Let's go, he said, and we walked out, leaving the mansion and its weight behind. We didn't speak much on the drive back to my tiny apartment. Julian's hands gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping him grounded. I wanted to say something, anything, to ease the storm in his eyes. But words felt too small for what he'd just done. He'd walked away from everything: money, power, a name that opened doors for me. Inside my apartment, the reality hit. My place was a shoebox, with peeling paint and a couch that sagged in the middle. Julian looked out of place, his polished shoes on my thrift store rug, but he didn't seem to care. He sank onto the couch, pulling me down beside him. Are you okay? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He laughed, a brittle sound. I just told my father to shove his empire. I don't know what I am. I reached for his hand, my thumb brushing over his knuckles. You're Julian. That's enough. He looked at me, his eyes searching, and then he kissed my heart, desperate, like he was trying to anchor himself. I kissed him back, pouring every ounce of gratitude and fear into it. We were free, but freedom came with a cost, and I wasn't sure either of us knew how to pay it. The next few weeks were a crash course in survival. Julian moved in, his designer clothes stuffed into my cramped closet. He got a job at a bookstore, shelving novels for minimum wage, a far cry from the boardrooms he'd been groomed for. I picked up extra shifts at the loft, the tips barely covering our rent. But we made it work. We cooked cheap meals together, laughed over burnt pasta, and fell asleep tangled in each other, the world outside fading away. But the world didn't stay quiet. Julian's friends' old friends started texting, their messages dripping with pity or scorn. "You're throwing your life away," one said. "For what?" "A fling." Julian deleted the messages, but I saw the way they chipped at him, the way doubt crept into his eyes when he thought I wasn't looking. One night, I found him on the fire escape, staring at the city lights. "Do you regret it?" I asked, my heart in my throat. He turned to me, his face half-shadowed. "No. But it's hard, Caleb." I didn't realize how much of me was tied to that life. I sat beside him, our knees touching. "You're more than that life. You're you." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "What if I'm not enough? For you? For this?" I wanted to tell him he was everything, but words felt cheap. So I showed him instead, pulling him close, kissing him under the stars until the doubts felt smaller, if only for a moment. But the cracks kept growing. Julian's father wasn't done with him. A letter arrived, crisp and formal, offering a deal, return to the family, take his place in the business, and all would be forgiven. The alternative was clear: stay with me, and lose everything for good. Julian didn't show me the letter at first. I found it crumpled in the trash, the words like a knife in my chest. I confronted him, my voice shaking. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I knew you'd think I'd leave," he said, his eyes pleading. "And I'm not. Caleb, I'm not." "Then why keep it?" I asked, holding up the letter. He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Because part of me wonders if I'm dragging you down. You deserve better than this, better than a guy who's got nothing but a bookstore job and a pissed-off dad." I stepped closer, my hands on his face, forcing him to look at me. "I don't want better. I want you." That night, we made a pact: no more secrets, no more doubts. We'd face whatever came together. But promises are fragile, and the world has a way of testing them. A week later, I came home to find Julian packing a bag. My heart stopped. "What's going on?" "It's not what you think," he said quickly, zipping the bag. "My mom reached out. She's in Savannah. Wants to see me. I haven't talked to her in years. Caleb, I need to know why now." I nodded, relief and worry tangling in my chest. "I'm coming with you." He hesitated, then nodded. "Okay. Together." The drive to Savannah was quiet, the road stretching out like a question mark. Julian's mother, Elena, lived in a modest house by the river, a far cry from the Carver mansion. She was in her late 40s, with Julian's dark eyes and a guarded smile. She hugged him, tentative, like she wasn't sure she had the right. Over dinner, she told us why she'd left a marriage that suffocated her, a life that demanded too much. "I wasn't strong enough to stay," she said, her voice heavy with regret. "But I've been watching you, Julian, and I'm proud of you for choosing your own path." Julian's jaw tightened, and I could see the weight of years in his eyes, years of wondering why she'd left him behind. "Why now?" he asked. "Because I heard about you and Caleb," she said, glancing at me with a warmth that caught me off guard. "And I wanted you to know you're not alone." That night, we stayed in her guest room. The river's hum outside our window. Julian was quiet, processing, but his hand never left mine. For the first time, I felt like we were building something real, not just a moment, but a future. Back in Atlanta, things felt different, lighter, somehow. Julian's mother gave him something he hadn't had in years: hope that he could be more than his father's shadow. We settled into a rhythm, our little life of shared shifts and late-night talks. I started sketching again, filling pages with Julian's face, his smile, the way he looked at me like I was his world. But peace is a fragile thing. Richard Carver hadn't given up. One evening, a sleek black car pulled up outside the loft as I was closing. A man in a suit handed me an envelope, his face blank. Inside was a check, 6 figures, made out to me, with a note in Richard's precise handwriting: "Walk away. For his sake." I tore it up, but the weight of it lingered. Richard wasn't just fighting for Julian's future. He was fighting to erase me. I didn't tell Julian at first, not wanting to add to his burden. But secrets have a way of unraveling. He found the torn check in my jacket pocket, his face paling as he pieced it together. "He tried to buy you off," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "I didn't take it," I said, stepping closer. "I'd never take it." Julian's eyes were fire. "I'm done with him. Done with his games." He stormed out, and I followed, fear clawing at me. We ended up at his father's office, a glass tower that loomed over the city. Julian didn't wait for permission, pushing past security to confront Richard in his penthouse suite. "You think you can control me?" Julian shouted, his voice echoing off the polished walls. "You think you can buy my life?" Richard stood behind his desk, unruffled. "I'm protecting you, Julian, from a mistake that will ruin you." "Caleb's not a mistake," Julian said, his voice breaking. "He's the only thing that makes sense." I stood frozen, my heart pounding. Richard's eyes flicked to me, cold and calculating. "You'll drag him down. Boy, you're nothing without this family." Julian stepped closer, his voice steady now. "I'd rather be nothing with him than everything without." We left, the city lights blurring as we drove back to our apartment. Julian was quiet, but his hand rested on my thigh, a silent promise. That night, we didn't sleep. We talked, planned, dreamed. We'd build our own life, one that didn't belong to anyone else. But Richard's reach was long. The next week, my manager at the loft called me into her office. "I'm sorry, Caleb. We have to let you go. Orders from above." I knew who above was. Richard owned the building, probably half the block. I came home to find Julian pacing, his phone buzzing with messages from his father's lawyers. "He's trying to break us," Julian said, his voice raw. "He thinks if he makes it hard enough, I'll go back. Then we fight," I said, grabbing his hands. "Together." We did. Julian started applying for jobs outside his father's influence, and I found work at a small coffee shop across town. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. We leaned on each other, our love a shield against the world's sharp edges. One night, we went back to the rooftop where it all started. The loft was quieter now, the summer crowds gone. We stood at the edge, the city glittering below, and Julian pulled me close. "I don't know what's next," he said, his voice soft but sure. "But I know I want it with you." I kissed him, the wind carrying away my fears. Then that's enough. Months passed, and we carved out a life that was messy but ours. Julian got a job at a nonprofit, helping kids from rough backgrounds find their way. I started taking art classes, my sketches turning into something I was proud of. We weren't rich, but we were happy, and that felt like a miracle. Richard didn't reach out again, but his shadow lingered. We heard whispers, lawsuits, business deals, attempts to pull Julian back. But Julian was done bending. He'd chosen me, chosen us, and every day, he proved it. One evening, Elena visited, her eyes bright with pride as she saw our tiny apartment, our life built from scratch. "You're stronger than I ever was," she told Julian, her voice thick. She handed us a small box, a pair of simple silver rings, etched with tiny stars. "For both of you," she said, smiling at me. "Because you're family now." Julian slid a ring onto my finger, his hands trembling. "I don't know if I'm ready for forever," he said, his voice low, "but I'm ready for every day with you." I laughed, tears stinging my eyes. "That's enough." We didn't have a big ceremony, just a quiet moment on that same rooftop, under the same stars where we danced that first night. Elena was there, along with a few friends who'd stuck by us. We exchanged vows, simple and true, promising to fight for each other, no matter what. The city stretched out below, a reminder of how far we'd come. We'd faced wealth, power, and prejudice, and we'd come out stronger. Julian wasn't a rich heir anymore, and I wasn't just a barista. We were us, and that was enough. Years later, I'd look back on that night and realize it wasn't the end of our story, but the beginning. We'd face more challenges, bills, doubts, the world's endless noise, but we'd face them together. Julian taught me that love isn't a game, but a choice, made every day, and I'd choose him, over and over, no matter the cost, because some truths are worth daring for.